Laurel Prep Academy is known for its basketball prowess, but what about its academics?
Tonight, the Maryland Department of Education has launched an investigation into Laurel Prep because of what our News 4 I-Team discovered. The I-Team's Tisha Thompson exposes what's really happening when the students aren't on the court.
Life for Randall Nelson always seems to be teetering on the rim.
Violence, drugs, peer pressure, it's a lot.
He never knew his mother. His father,
I was 5 when he passed.
Shuffled from relative to relative, he ran away at 13.
I was running away from a life that I didn't want, an abusive life, you know. I see the basket and the ball. Everyone else, I blank it out. Everyone knew I was going to go somewhere.
But he says he realized late in the game he needed better grades at a better school if he wanted to play at the college level.
I was going to transfer to a whole different school for my senior year, but I wouldn't be eligible to play basketball. So I went to Laurel Prep so I can play and still get my education.
Randall says Laurel Prep Academy told him it could get him the attention of college recruiters while he, at the same time, finished high school. He played plenty of basketball, but his grades?
I didn't complete a course.
The News 4 I-Team has found no one else on the team has either. Multiple sources tell us most of the players have already graduated from high school or go to another high school to get their education. A few, like Randall, were initially enrolled in online courses, but Randall says Laurel Prep never paid the bill.
This is the computer lab.
This is Levitt Brown, Laurel Prep's coach and founder, and Harriet Cox, the school's academic administrator. And these are the computers Randall and the other students were supposed to use for their classes. Are these computers working yet or not so much?
No, they're not. We don't have the internet running over here.
The computer lab is housed in the Laurel Boys and Girls Club, which Brown says he also runs.
This school is free.
Brown showed us receipts detailing how the Boys and Girls Club pays for Laurel Prep's uniforms, travel, and other basketball expenses. But when it comes to classes, they could only produce these emails showing how many credits Randall and another student needed to graduate, making many wonder if Laurel Prep is nothing more than a basketball farm team.
We signed them up for the classes, but it didn't suit them.
Even though her title in her shirt says she's Laurel Prep's academic administrator, Harriet Cox says she isn't responsible for educating the team's players.
It's a college prep program, and all we're doing is basically trying to get kids to qualify, whether it's trying to get their ACTs done, get their SATs done. We haven't had anybody right now to take their ACTs or SATs through us. We've registered several kids to the online program, and they wasn't successful on it because as they was trying to say that I was the educator, I'm not the educator, I'm a registered nurse.
That's when Cox told us she doesn't consider Laurel Prep to even be a school.
And it's not a school, okay? It is not a school.
But that's not what the Maryland State Board of Education says. The I-Team found Laurel Prep Academy is registered as a church-exempt school, meaning it is exempt from state oversight as long as it's connected to a religious organization.
Wow, I fell for it.
Pastor Tony Igbinoba says his church, Power of Liberty Ministries International, was renting space inside the Laurel Boys and Girls Club for its services when Brown asked him if he could use the church's tax ID number.
It said to me that a tax ID would be used for Laurel Prep School, okay, to help kids that are less fortunate who dropped out of middle school or high school to be able to play sport and at the same time get education.
But Pastor Tony says when he discovered the kids weren't actually getting an education, he withdrew his support.
These kids that were here, they're not going to school, they're not doing anything.
That was news to the Maryland State Department of Education, which tells the I-Team it has now launched an investigation into Laurel Prep after we told them what we've uncovered. Without the church's affiliation, Laurel Prep would no longer be exempt from state oversight.
All my life, there's been adults that I've trusted. There's been people that say they will get me places, but they've all ended up leaving.
Randall's now working as a security guard, making just enough money to pay for the online classes he's now taking on his own to get his GED.
Some way, somehow, I have to teach kids. This game is not all about just shooting the ball.
To teach them what no one taught him. You have to go to school if you don't want to miss your shot. It's something great. The NCAA told us it's seen a growing number of people who create a basketball team and call their team a school, but they outsource the education. When we searched the NCAA's list of certified schools, Laurel Prep was not on that list. If you want to see if a school you're interested in is on that list, go to our website, NBCWashington.com, and click on Investigations. Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.
It's supposed to be a safe place for kids to play.
But tonight, the News 4 I-Team has found new evidence. Teenagers are living inside the Laurel Boys and Girls Club, potentially putting themselves in danger. The I-Team's Tisha Thompson takes you inside the club, which is now being torn apart by adults who are fighting over money, power, and basketball.
For decades, kids have been coming to the Laurel Boys and Girls Club to play basketball and other after-school activities. Overseeing it all, Levitt Brown.
I'm a staunch believer of Boys and Girls Clubs. I was raised through Boys and Girls Clubs. My mother ran them for 30 years.
Unaffiliated with the National Boys and Girls Club organization, this local club is technically run by a president and a board of directors. But Brown makes no bones about it.
My name is on the credit card.
And that, he says, means he's in charge.
Now, everybody I've talked to outside says the only man who really has control is Levitt Brown. Levitt Brown has all the control. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement.
Really?
Yeah.
You don't argue with that?
No, I don't argue with that.
Mr. Brown runs everything, meaning every deposit, every transaction, everything runs through him.
The club's former athletic director, Adrian Russo, says he's worried that with so much control, no one really knows where the club's money goes.
They actually came in and put the ceiling fans and stuff in.
We first met Russo a year and a half ago after the I-Team received complaints people were living inside the club's locker room. At Brown's direction, Russo showed us around the club, explaining kids would sometimes crash on the locker room's couch.
I think the big question is, do they live here?
No. Nobody lives here.
But look at what the I-Team found in these city inspection records since that interview. Pictures showing 3 high school-age kids living in the locker room for months in what fire inspectors labeled unsafe conditions. No windows, shoddy wiring, and multiple kerosene and propane tank heaters. Records show it's happened at least 4 different times. Most recently, this May, when 4 more people were found living in the building's annex.
We knew we were wrong.
Now, Russo admits people have been living on and off here for years. Russo says he's now talking about what's really happening inside the club because he's concerned Levitt Brown is spending too much of the club's money on Laurel Prep Academy, a new basketball prep school Brown also runs.
They were going to games, spending funds on hotels and meals and travel, and we didn't have any toilet paper in our building. We didn't have any heat for our kids. We didn't have uniforms for our kids.
In response, Brown showed us some of his financial paperwork, which shows he does use club money to pay for Laurel Prep. But he says the real reason kids didn't get their uniforms this year is because of this, the club's outstanding $34,000 water bill. Brown says he's been forced to dip into his personal savings to pay the bills.
I went in my retirement account and took over $40,000 out of that.
It might not still be enough to keep the doors open. The I-Team has found the club's building has received multiple fire and building code violations in the last few years. It's also a registered historical landmark. And earlier this year, the Maryland Historical Trust found the property in such poor condition, unsecured and unattended, it had a very real threat of vandalism and fire. Adrian Russo says he's now been kicked out of the club because he came forward to us with his concerns. Levitt Brown says kids have been living in the building recently because they are students at Laurel Prep who had nowhere else to live.
Tonight, a local Boys and Girls Club is under scrutiny after a News 4 I-Team investigation.
We first started asking questions about the Laurel Boys and Girls Club more than a year ago. Now, 2 weeks after our report, its school has been closed, and the Boys and Girls Club itself is facing multiple government investigations. Tisha Thompson is here with details. Tisha?
The Maryland State Department of Education told us today that the well-known basketball prep school called Laurel Prep Academy is now officially closed. The state launched an investigation into the school after we discovered students going there never took a single class. But that's just the first in what now appears to be multiple investigations into the school's parent organization, the Laurel Boys and Girls Club.
It's only been innuendo and rumor at this point, until you ran your piece.
Laurel City Council member Donna Crary says she was angered and shocked by what she saw in our News 4 I-Team investigation into Laurel Prep. We showed how kids going there played a lot of basketball, but never took a class, didn't even have internet or working computers. The club's leaders told us they were using club funds to pay for Laurel Prep's uniforms and other expenses, even though the club has a long history of financial problems and a long list of building and fire code violations.
When they're standing there admitting certain things on television, I guess that was shocking. I didn't expect them to be admitting it on the record in front of thousands of people.
Crary says the club has been asking the council to help pay its bills for years and receives roughly $110,000 a year from the city.
You can't be wasting money like this. I don't care if it's $10 and $10,000.
The council has now ordered the club's leaders to appear before them Thursday night to respond to what they saw in our report. At the same time, the city's mayor has asked the Maryland State Comptroller to launch an investigation into the club for alleged misuse of club funds, corruption, and tax fraud.
I am angry.
Councilmember H. Edward Ricks says the city held numerous meetings last year as part of a special task force set up to help the club. But he now says he feels lied to based on what he saw in our story.
There were things that surprised me, things that we thought that we knew were going on, but even the task force that the mayor and city council helped to put together was not able to bring those things to light.
The biggest surprise for Ricks? All of the club's leaders we interviewed admitted people have been living in the club off and on for years, in violation of the city's building codes.
I'm worried that kids are being taken advantage of. I'm worried that the adults are taking too much for themselves and not enough for the children. I'm worried that they're trying to run a school down there where computers aren't even hooked up to the internet. And I'm worried that somebody is going to get hurt or maybe even killed down there.
We repeatedly tried to get comment from the club's leadership today, but never heard back. When we previously spoke to the club's longtime leader, Levitt Brown, he insisted he's looking out for the best interest of the club, and rather than improperly use money, he has instead dipped into his own savings to pay some of the club's outstanding bills. Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.
There's a major change coming to one of the most popular boys and girls clubs in our area, all as a result of a News 4 I-Team investigation. It's the Laurel City Council held a special hearing last night and asked for some explanations about what Tisha Thompson and the I-Team discovered is really happening behind the doors of the Laurel Boys and Girls Club. She's got the surprising answers that they received when they started asking some hard questions.
The Laurel City Council wanted Club President Nancy Lilly to explain why the Laurel Boys and Girls Club spent so much money on its now defunct basketball prep school when it didn't have enough money to fix a long list of building and fire code violations, and why the club was housing the school's players in violation of city codes.
Who made the decision to house individuals in the building?
Mr. Levitt Brown made that decision.
Lilly explained the man holding the notebooks behind her, Levitt Brown, made most of the decisions and controlled all of the money.
You're $192,000 a year in the hole. Does that sound like a good business decision to you?
No, it's not a viable business. No, we cannot continue running that way. Yes, we need to put things in place to make it viable and to make it run.
That's when Lilly said she wasn't even going to be president much longer. She explained that in the wake of our investigation, the club's membership held a special election, voted her out. The club's executive director, Harriet Cox, also quit, and a new board will now take over in the next 2 weeks. Are you going to give over the passwords and the checkbook and all access to the finances?
Absolutely. I mean, that's you got to do that.
Are you going to have any role in the club in terms of the board or being in the leadership?
No, I've been doing this 9 years. I'm burnt out.
The mayor did write a letter to the Maryland comptroller asking for an investigation. He says he's concerned about, and he uses words like corruption, tax fraud, very serious accusations. I want to give you an opportunity to respond to that kind of language.
Well, first of all, we haven't committed any tax fraud. There's no corruption in the club, and that's it. There's no tax fraud or corruption in the club.
What will the Maryland comptroller find when it takes a look at your finances?
I think they're going to find out that we're broke, that we've been struggling for years. It's a miracle that we're actually still in existence.
And with that, Levitt Brown walked away from the meeting and perhaps the Laurel Boys and Girls Club for good. In Laurel, Tisha Thompson, News 4 I-Team.